There will now be an opportunity for speeches, and I will begin by calling the First Minister and then the Deputy First Minister to address the Assembly. I now call the First Minister, Arlene Foster.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and may I first of all congratulate you as you are elected to serve as Speaker of this House. It is a role with much responsibility to ensure that members on all benches are heard, and I look forward to working with you and indeed the broader Speaker team which has just been elected. Mr Speaker, to serve as the First Minister of Northern Ireland is deeply humbling and brings with it enormous responsibility to the people that we represent. This is the 4th anniversary of when I first took up this role. A lot of water has passed under the bridge since then, but today the real work starts. This last 3 years have focused too much on division and recrimination, and there's plenty of blame to go around, but the time has come to move forward with resolution. The lessons have been learned, and it's time to get Northern Ireland moving forward again. However, the restoration of this Assembly and Executive alone will not solve our waiting lists or reduce the staff pressures in our hospitals. Indeed, simply filling posts will not resolve the mental health challenges our society is facing at the moment. There needs to be action and decisions need to be made. The Bengoa report needs to be implemented. It already has cross-party agreement. It has a 10-year plan, but that was in 2016. And we have lost 3 years. And to deliver this transformation, it will not be easy. It will require courageous decisions by members on all sides of this House. Mr Speaker, I pledge to work in a collegiate manner with all the parties across this chamber to ensure that our public services are improved, that every citizen feels valued, and that we lay a solid foundation for the next generation. In 2021, Northern Ireland will celebrate its centenary, and we want to do so with safer streets, better schools and a first-class health service free at the point of need. The National Health Service is unique to the United Kingdom, and we must work together to protect it and strengthen it. Within this chamber, Mr Speaker, there are people who are British, Irish, Northern Irish and European. There are many identities. And those of us who are here today should have each of our identities respected. That is why we reached the fair and balanced deal which caters for British and Irish as well as new and emerging identities. We want everyone to feel at home in Northern Ireland. In particular, I draw attention to the commitments to fully implement the Armed Forces Covenant and establish a Veterans Commissioner. These are very significant for young men and women from these shores who have or continue to defend democracy all over the world. Mr Speaker, you along with other members in this chamber are an Irish Republican, and I am a Unionist with a strong British identity. But regardless of our differences, we must seek out common ground. When I visited Our Lady's Grammar School in Newry, the pupils gave me a lovely picture as a gift. It has hung in my office upstairs ever since, just above my shoulder, and in Irish it states, "Together we are strong." We have many differences, and Michelle's narrative of the past 40 years could not be any more different to mine. And I'm not sure we will ever agree on much about the past, but we can agree that there was too much suffering and that we cannot allow society to drift back and allow division to grow. Northern Ireland is succeeding in many ways. It's time for Stormont to move forward and show that together we are stronger for the benefit of everyone. Fixing problems in schools and reforming our health service so people receive timely treatment should be a priority for all of the parties. So, Mr Speaker, let us get down to work and, most importantly, let us get Northern Ireland moving again. Thank you.
Michelle O'Neill.
And can I also say congratulations on your new position, and I look forward to your leadership in this Assembly. This is a defining moment for our politics here. From today, the parties represented in this chamber undertake to cooperate in every way that we can in order to rebuild public trust and confidence in and engagement with this Assembly and its executive. Our mission must be to deliver good politics. Our mission must be to deliver on health, on education and jobs for everyone right across our communities. I see no contradiction whatsoever in declaring our firm commitment to power sharing with unionism in the Stormont Assembly, whilst also initiating a mature and inclusive debate about new political arrangements which examine Ireland's future beyond Brexit. Similarly, I see no contradiction in unionism working the existing constitutional arrangements whilst rightly taking its place in the conversation about what a new Ireland would look like. We can do this while maintaining our independent, distinct political identities and working in the best interests of all of the people. That is my firm commitment. After 3 years without functioning institutions, the 5 parties are here to form a new executive. It is my hope that we do so united in our determination to deliver a stable power-sharing coalition that works on the basis of openness and transparency, that works on the basis of accountability, that works on the basis of good faith and with no surprises. I am really honoured to follow in the footsteps of my dear friend and comrade Martin McGuinness, taking up the position of Deputy First Minister as joint head of government. I too pledge to follow the example which he set by actively promoting reconciliation and building bridges that we all can cross to end sectarianism and bigotry. Resistance to equality caused the executive to fall. A refusal to embrace citizens' identity and rights left people frustrated, left people angry and left people divided. This cannot be repeated. Today, each of us are called to lead, to build common cause for a society that makes room for and gives respect to every single citizen, to deliver a power-sharing government that is truly grounded in fairness and in inclusion, and that has the courage to lead from the front in these times of change. Our politics must embrace civic society, trade unions, the voluntary and community sector, businesses, academia, farmers, church leaders, students, all must have a permanent place and a space to advise, input and hold this Assembly and Executive to account. We must work together to solve the problems that are facing this society. We will apply the full powers and resources available to us to address the major issues of the day, facing all those that we represent. I welcome the historic official recognition of the Irish language in this state. The guarantees for the language in law represents meaningful party of esteem for the community from which I proudly come. Also, that the equality, mutual respect and all-Ireland approaches enshrined in the Good Friday Agreement are being embraced, and that we deliver on the promises of 1998 to a new generation of young people. Today, we have a basis in which to move forward in building a fairer society and to build good government. We will institute necessary reforms across the board in order to get things done, but also to get things right. In this new administration, we must have shared values and policy objectives set out in a new programme for government. Yesterday, our nurses and healthcare workers had to take industrial action. Let's make that the last day they have to do that. This Executive will move immediately to settle the ongoing healthcare workers' pay parity dispute. Our health service is in crisis and demands our urgent attention. Waiting lists are unacceptable. The health service needs reformed, so we have a big job of work to do. As we face into the great uncertainties of Brexit, it is an imperative that we redouble our efforts to develop and rebuild a modern, competitive and sustainable economy where we open doors to trade, investment, jobs and tourism. We need decent jobs that value workers and protect their rights. We need to improve our competitiveness through investing in our public structures, our public services and infrastructure. To conclude, as we approach the centenary of partition, let's not refight the battles of the past. It's time to bring people together. We can open doors, we can let the future in, we can give people hope and we can give our young people opportunity. It's my sincere hope that 2020 is a time of real change, which reinvents the optimism and the hope that we have experienced before, but our young people have not. It is time now for parties to have courage, as we all choose hope over fear, and we enter a new era of politics in this society. I want to wish all members the very, very best, particularly all the new MLAs. And I want to welcome and congratulate all those ministers that will be appointed into government today. We have 2 years left of this mandate. Let's go out and make a difference. Scoramila Mayagov.
Could I call on Nicola Mallon, please?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And in addition to paying tribute to the outgoing Speaker, we also wish you the best in your new post. As I'd said previously, we have waited 3 years, and people will rightly be wondering why it has taken so long. Our view is that the deal could have been much better and that it does contain a number of missed opportunities, but for us, there are 2 key tests. The first is how our Executive and Assembly operates, and the second is what it actually does to transform our citizens' lives. We have all committed to a greater openness and transparency in the Executive. We have all committed to seeing the end of the abuse of power and the reign of spads. And we have all committed to opening up this place in our government to better involve our citizens, and that is why we pushed very hard for the Citizens' Assembly. But there are also a number of commitments around policies that we have all committed to. We are all committed to tackling the crises in our health and education system and delivering pay justice. We pushed very hard with other parties to secure welfare mitigation so that we can protect our low-income families and our disabled citizens. We pushed as well for an anti-poverty strategy, a meaningful anti-poverty strategy, and a commitment to build new and more social and affordable homes. We have also committed to tackling regional imbalance in terms of investment in our economy, and we have committed to the expansion of McGee, and we have committed to climate action, among many, many things. They are big commitments, and we have been pushing both governments because we need to see financial support, clear financial support. But all of us must honour those commitments. We will begin into the Executive and we will be in this chamber because we genuinely want to see power sharing. We genuinely and sincerely want to work with all parties so that we can improve the lives of everybody living in Northern Ireland. We have entered in good faith, and we are taking at face value that everyone else is acting in the same spirit. So we will play our part, and I look forward as a party working with the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister, with ministers in the Executive and with all of our MLAs here across all political parties. We will always be reviewing and monitoring our position and how we operate. The people of Northern Ireland deserve it, and we will always be honest right throughout this mandate with the people of Northern Ireland. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Call on Steve Aiken.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. And it would be churlish of me not to welcome the appointments of the new First Minister and Deputy First Minister going forward. For us, the key to this is being able to transform Northern Ireland and to make it work again. And I say to all the new MLAs who are in the room here today, we have a real task ahead of us. Because of anything we have seen over the last couple of years is that Northern Ireland desperately needs open, transparent, accountable and responsible government that is actually open to everybody in Northern Ireland to see how we're going to make changes. And I look at the gallery and I see members of the civil service and I see other members there as well. There is a considerable amount of work that needs to be done on reform. The Northern Ireland political machine and government machine is broken. It needs to be fixed. The fact that we will be in receipt of considerable, though we don't know how much yet, largesse from our government to sort out some of the problems we have, gives a burden to us to make sure we appropriately manage those resources. We actually deliver for the people of Northern Ireland, and be in no doubt whatsoever over the next 2 years or however long this Assembly is going to run, we must be able to make our government work. So the Ulster Unionist Party is pledged to work closely with our other partners in government. But what we want to see is a genuine transformation. We must change the culture of government in Northern Ireland. If we do not, Mr. Speaker, and First Minister and Deputy First Minister, we're doomed to fail. We cannot allow that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Regan. Could I now call on Naomi Long?
Mr. Speaker, can I first of all congratulate you and your team of Deputy Speakers on your appointment today. There is significant pressure facing the Assembly and all of us in terms of the business of this House, given the backlog of work that now needs to be undertaken in swift time. And we will work with you constructively in order to ensure that that can be done in as expeditious a manner as possible. A lot of water, much of it turbulent, has passed under the bridge in the last 3 years. However, I don't believe that today is a day for recriminations. I believe that it is a day for focusing forward and for looking forward to the opportunities and the challenges that lie ahead. Our commitment throughout the last 3 years has been to deliver the restoration and the reform of these institutions to deliver fit for purpose, accountable and sustainable government which can deliver for all the people of Northern Ireland. The deal which the governments have put forward is imperfect. I think all of us recognise that it is a compromise on the positions which each of the parties has taken in the negotiations. But we cannot ask others to do what we are not willing to do ourselves, and on balance I believe that it is an honourable compromise, and that if implemented with goodwill and if implemented in a spirit of cooperation and inclusion, can form the basis on which we can deliver improved government for the people here in Northern Ireland. I want to congratulate the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister in their appointment to their roles. Much of the heavy lifting will have to be done by the two main parties, as is always the case. But I want to reassure both of you, through the Speaker, that we will not be found wanting in playing our role in terms of supporting you in the job that you have to do, in terms of encouraging you and being an effective support where you are acting in the best interests of all the people of Northern Ireland, and on occasion of being a robust challenge where we fear that that is not the case. But we hope that we will do that too in a spirit of constructive engagement, and one where we work together to deliver. There is optimism outside this place. It would be perhaps overstating our position as one that is optimistic. We are realistic about the prospects of this agreement. There is a lot of work to be done, but we are also determined that it will succeed, and we will play whatever role we can in ensuring that it does, and you have my best wishes for the remainder of this term and for the future of this Assembly. Thank you.
Ms Naomi Long, can I now call on Claire Bailey, please?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would like to also congratulate yourself and your team on your new roles, and also to our First Minister and Deputy First Minister on their reappointments, because this is a positive development for Northern Ireland today, and one on which we can hopefully begin to move forward. Because after 3 years of stagnation, I think that we can all agree that people have suffered enough. And while there is much contained within the draft agreement, there is so much there that has been promised before, but failed to be delivered. And if we are seriously intent in this chamber to do things differently, then it is delivery that we need to do. Let delivery be the new approach for this new decade. And climate breakdown is the biggest threat that we face, yet we have done so little to address this. People are so far ahead of our politics and our policy, and they are demanding that we step up. So the Green Party are very encouraged to note the very high level of environmental commitments given within the draft deal. Promises such as a strategy to reduce our carbon emissions in light of the Paris Accord, an energy strategy to transition to a carbon neutral society, an independent environmental protection agency, long overdue and long campaigned for, to eliminate plastic pollution, an economic strategy that will include a Green New Deal, the close down of the RHI, all very welcome. But we are the only place across these islands to yet see and endorse a Climate Act. Let this new decade and this new approach be one where Northern Ireland is no longer left behind as a place apart. Because regardless of anyone's identity, Mr. Speaker, a new Ireland is coming. It is here. And it's called the climate emergency. And it knows no borders. So we will all be affected. We truly believe that today a platform now exists to create a sustainable, accountable, devolved executive, assembly and society. The Green Party really hope that the will is there for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire Bailey. Can I call on Jim Allister?
Mr. Speaker, I get it that people are desperate to have their health service fixed, but I will not join in the pretense that an executive here, which can only exist by the grace and favour of a party that doesn't want Northern Ireland to exist, will bring them the stability that they crave. I also remind the public that the present health crisis was made in Stormont. It was the executive which broke with pay parity for nurses. It was the executive that, through successive ministers, radically reduced the number of beds in our hospitals. And of course, we're only here today because of a double blackmail. Blackmail of a Secretary of State who says, I have the money to fix the health service, but I won't give it unless there's an executive. A Secretary of State who shamelessly put the life of an executive above the life of the sick. And of course, the blackmail of Sinn Féin, that you can only have a government if you pay the ransom that they demanded. Indeed, it's a commentary in itself on the perversity of these governmental arrangements, that though it was Sinn Féin that tore down the institutions for what they were worth, it was the DUP that had to pay the price to get them back. And what a price it was. To eat a mountain of their own words, laced with yoghurt and curry, a special brand of Campbell's soup. What a digestive system the DUP has. I remember 2017. The call of the First Minister was, not in my watch, in respect of Irish language legislation. And yet here today, she is the handmaiden of that very legislation. Here today, she is the sponsor of an Irish language enforcer who will put Irish upon every public authority, including this House, where we will have the ludicrous spectacle of needless interpretation, and on every council chamber we will put our ratepayers to the needless cost of translation. Now, there may well be a honeymoon period for this executive, at least until the Irish language legislation is safely on the statute book, at least until the innocent victims have been betrayed by the passing of the unbalanced Stormont House Agreement on the legacy proposals. But at the end of it, this is only a staging post for Sinn Féin. The First Minister knows that. She knows that from her infamous reptilian turn of phrase when she knew what she would be doing if she gave in to the Irish language demand. But power, any power, is the supreme draw. And even now, we're not even going to have an opposition. I'll do my best to give you as much opposition as I can.
OK, now the honeymoon might not last that long, so thank you very much for your remarks, Mr. Allister. So can I now call on Gerry Carroll?
Speaker, and I believe it is plainly obvious that this Assembly will have some major issues to deal with and to urgently deal with in the days and weeks ahead. We live in a society where increasing numbers of people are utilising food banks, largely because of the welfare reform policies implemented by previous administrations in this chamber. And we have a crisis in our health system as waiting lists grow. We have a deep and profound crisis in our education system as school budgets are stretched to the limits. It is by these measures, Mr. Speaker, that we will judge the conduct of this new executive and indeed anyone who holds office in it. And the recent deal, Mr. Speaker, that was agreed by the 5 main parties is not a deal that people before profit were part of constructing. It's not our deal, it's your deal. We were not part of the talks, we were excluded from them, despite our call for them to be open and for all party talks. We were not permitted to contribute to the content in this deal, which we think was the wrong decision, and one which disenfranchised the voice of smaller parties and those who voted for us. For that reason, people before profit, our job, Mr. Speaker, as we see it, is obviously to collaborate and work with people where we can and when there are issues in this deal of a positive nature in order that they are carried out. But it's also our role, Mr. Speaker, to highlight where we see flaws in this deal, and not only because they may have bad consequences, but also because they may act not as a solution to the underlying tensions in this Assembly, but as a bridge to the next crisis, whenever that may be. I want to pay tribute, Mr. Speaker, to the nurses, to the health workers, to the trade unions, who so evidently transformed the political debate here, who put on the agenda in the most direct way the question of pay parity and safe staffing levels, who confronted everyone in this room with the real crisis in the health service and refused to back down. These workers are the primary drivers of any progress that we may see, and it's worth remembering that any change we might see with regards to pay parity or investment in the health service was not something that was gifted to us by the British or Irish governments or even the 5 parties here. It is something that came from the action and struggle of those workers and unions, so I congratulate them on what they have been able to achieve thus far. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I welcome that there is an aspiration in this deal to resolve pay parity. Thus far, though, the unions still have not been made an offer, and there is no cast iron commitment as to how precisely the pay dispute will actually be resolved and whether pay parity will indeed be restored. And this must be a top priority for the executive formed here today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And thank you, Gerry Carroll. Can I call on Claire Sugden?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I just want to congratulate you and your deputies for your appointments. I am, however, somewhat disappointed that there are no women within the Speaker's office, but we do, however, make up for that within the Executive Office, and I do want to wish my sincere congratulations to the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister. I worked with both women in government, over 3 years ago now, and I can say and put on record that both women are incredibly capable and can do wonderful things for Northern Ireland if there is will. And I hope today is a demonstration of that will, because we need to take Northern Ireland forward. It has got to the point now where we can't continue in this vein. I also want to congratulate the ministers who will be appointed here this afternoon. I do believe there is a wasted opportunity that none has decided to go into opposition. Don't fear opposition. Opposition improves legislation. If policy cannot uphold the challenge that other members provide to it, then it's not good policy, and no one benefits from that. I do, however, appreciate that the stability of Northern Ireland does require that we have a 5-party executive, and I, as an independent member of this Northern Ireland Assembly, will support that executive in the work that we do, because critically moving forward, that work needs to happen. We've had, nearly 20 years of political party nonsense, I would describe it as. And I think now, moving forward, the focus of this Assembly needs to be on good governance. Good governance that looks at the needs of the people outside of this chamber. And maybe for once, we put those people first instead of the political parties that sit within this room. Today is a fantastic day for Northern Ireland. The people of Northern Ireland are ecstatic that we are able here today and represent them on their behalf. And I think that's important to note, that each one of us and the mandates that we all have represent the people of Northern Ireland. And it's them we disrespect when we disrespect each other within this chamber. I can't imagine that the problems that have existed over the past 3 years are going to be fixed overnight, and I think it's important that we as a chamber set an expectation that we are not going to fix the problems overnight. If anything, we need a root and branch review of every department in Northern Ireland, but it's good that the wheels are now moving, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you. Many thank you.
Claire Sugden. There are no further members indicating to speak. So I'll move on to members. Just to enable myself to chair the remaining business, I propose, with your leave, a short period of suspension to allow me to be properly briefed. The Assembly is by leave suspended until 3 p.m.